Hello YouTube, this is Morgan Airspeed Prime here with my next Avatar news update video. So in this one we have a little bit of information about the quest for a balanced Avatar game that we saw the Amazon listing for a little bit ago. So Avatar News has come out and given us what seems to be a little bit more of an update on it. No gameplay, no visuals from it, but just a little bit of a better sense for, I suppose, what it is going to be. So, he confirms the November 8th date, and the main thing here seems to be that, in his opinion, it has a Breath of the Wild art style, but not gameplay like Breath of the Wild. So, there's not too many details here. Like, this is why it's very difficult to cover this. You know, it says, yeah, it's coming this way for November 8th from Paramount and, Game Mill, of course. They are just the publisher. I don't think we actually... I don't even know if they develop games themselves or what. I'm guessing we just don't know the developer for this game yet. We were shown gameplay stills and footage and given a rundown of the game's story. So visually, it looks like it's out of the iconic Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild with that cel-shaded art style that has garnered so much praise. It's basically the world of Avatar shown through that lens. The gameplay, however, is not like Breath of the Wild. I want to make it clear the quest for balance isn't open world. And then the only other thing he says about gameplay is on Twitter when asked about it. He says, "I'm not really a gamer. I saw some footage and pictures of Aang exploring around and it looked exactly like Breath of the Wild to me. But it was pictures / videos of a computer screen. So I couldn't judge the quality from that, obviously." So that at least gives you some sense where, like, okay, you take control of Aang and are actually, like, moving him around some sort of an environment. And I think that at least gives us some sense that, okay, it's probably then, in that case, maybe not leaning into sort of the RPG style thing, but it could still be like that. And there's just sort of exploration segments, like, before you get to the next battle. We don't actually know. Otherwise, my expectation would be that it's either that sort of a thing where it's got some like exploration segments where you control the characters and then it goes into sort of an RPG style, maybe turn-based battle system, or it will be somewhat resembling the structure of the Legend of Korra video game that we got, where it's more of a kind of beat 'em up style game where it's just you're playing as one or a couple of characters that you can switch between. And you just go in and you have these kind of combos that you can do, but you're mostly just, doing these crazy elemental combos, taking out the enemies quite quickly. It probably won't be maybe as technical in a way as some of the Legend of Korra game kind of combat was because of the developer that we had for that. But if it is just something fun like that, I think it could work out somewhat well. Now, the framing of the game is that it's set after the end of the animated series. But this is only the framing of it. Members of the Order of the White Lotus have gotten together for a game of Pai Sho and start telling old war stories to each other. They tell the events of the end of the 100-Year War, the events of ATLA, of course, with Pakku covering Book 1, Bumi covering Book 2, and Iroh covering Book 3. You as a player play through these stories from start to end. However, their memories aren't foolproof, so you end up playing through alternate histories different from what happened in the show. It's kind of like Avatar's What If. Some of these are more serious, while some are more humorous. The only playable character I saw in small bits and pieces I was shown was Aang, but what I understand, there should be a bunch more for all the different stories. And yeah, it's ATLA specific, and it's coming to PS4, 5, Xbox One, SX, all those ones, Nintendo Switch and PC. So this is, I think, the confirmation that it's coming to PC, because I don't think it mentioned this on the listing from before. It will have a relatively big marketing push, so just keep an eye out soon. So this is obviously where it feels like a little bit weird. We're like, how many video games are there where, like, 2.5 months before the release of the game, like, nothing about it? So they're going to have to get on this, like, straight away. I know there is some sort of, I think, what is it, Gamescom or something like that that's happening in the next couple of days. Hopefully they use that to announce this, because it's probably about the time where they should start talking about this, to just get it out there. As for the whole framing thing, Order of White Lotus, I think that's a relatively nice idea to just acknowledge that you guys know the story. This is an ATLA game coming out in 2022. We want to make it somewhat different than just being the recap of the show. So here's them misremembering some of the elements. We'll see how that works. That could feel weird. That could work quite well. I don't really know what to make of it. But in general, what this feels like is, okay, this is the first Avatar video game we've gotten in a long time. Especially ATLA video game, the first one in a very long time. But it's still, going on 10 years since the Legend of Korra game came out. So we have been waiting a while for any Avatar video game. And so there's some element for me where I'm just like, okay, I'm somewhat excited for a new Avatar video game in a way, regardless of how good it is or not. Yes, elements of this description, and I suppose mainly the publisher, would have you maybe believe this is probably not going to be anything too crazy high quality or big budget. I get it. Every Avatar fan wants the high-end, AAA, open world, you can do everything Avatar video game. But we're probably a little bit off getting that. We do know there are quite a few other Avatar video games in development. There is, of course, the mobile game, which we just recently learned about, but there are apparently a bunch of other ones in development also. Now, again, do I expect any of them to necessarily be the big one? Perhaps not, but I'm assuming one of them is going to, I suppose, attempt to be more of a notable Avatar video game. This one, I think, is just going to be there to capitalize on the Avatar The Last Airbender hype, be a little bit of fun for people who just want to play an Avatar video game, and just highlight that, hey, we are back doing Avatar video games, and just show that, yeah, we'll do other stuff going forward. This really does feel just like the sort of ATLA recap game, where instead of just sort of re-releasing the old games, they're just doing something to tell that story again. We'll see how it looks, because if it does have a nice art style and the game is at least playable, it should be fine. The only way I'm probably not going to get this game is if we see footage of it and it just looks actively terrible. If it only looks okay, I'm still probably going to play it. It's going to take it being a disaster for me to not want to actually pick it up. That's kind of where I'm at with this, just because as an Avatar fan, I would like to play the new Avatar video game. So my expectations are relatively low, and then because I want to play an Avatar video game, the kind of barrier that it has to meet is also relatively low for me. Maybe when we start to get more regular Avatar video games, then we can start to be a little bit more picky, but, I'm fine with playing a game even if it's only okay, if it's Avatar. So that's really all there is to say there. Cool that they're doing at least a little bit more than just the ATLA recap using the Order of White Lotus characters, but we'll see how it goes. Beyond that, we just have some final bits of casting, I think, for the live action show. Irene Bedard has been cast as Yagoda. Megwon Fairbrother has been cast as Avatar Karuk. Nathaniel R. Khan has been cast as Chief Arnook, and Joel Ouellette has been cast as Han. So that's just rounding out the sort of Northern Water Tribe cast for the series. Most of the main characters are there. We already know about a lot of the other ones. With this show, very much like the video game in a way, there's not too much to say until we actually get to see some of it. All these actors seem fine. I'm not really familiar with most of them. I just want to see what the show looks like. So there's not a lot to say until we see pictures of the cast in outfits, until we see a trailer and then see the show. Same with the video game. We need to see some screenshots, or we need to see some gameplay immediately. That's the only thing that's really going to matter. So that's why, I've seen quite a bit of backlash against, this doesn't look like the high quality game. But we have to wait and see what it looks like before we properly take a stance on this. And then anyone actually expecting the first Avatar video game in 10 years to be the be all end all, I think has too much of the high expectations. But that has been the video. In the comments, let me know what your thoughts are, or what do you think this new Quest for Balance game is going to be like based on this description, and if you have any thoughts on the casting for the live action show. So other than that, that's been the video. Thanks for watching, and bye.